Let's talk about audience for a moment here. When we first start to write our essay, there are three main concerns that we want to keep in the back of our mind. The first one is the message. What is the message that I'm relaying to my audience? This could be that we want a law changed. This could be, if we look at the narrative, it might be supporting that this was an eventful day in my life. We're usually looking at some specific message that we want to deliver. Once we know the message, then we have to know who our audience is. Who are we writing to? How are they going to receive that message? If we're writing a narrative, it's probably going to be a general audience, and they're all likely to receive the message in some way or another. But we have to determine how they're going to receive that. We also can look at a research paper. A research paper might vary more in ways that people receive that message. If we look at somebody who already agrees with your position, they're going to receive it much differently than somebody who disagrees with that position. So we then have to think about the method that we use to deliver that information. If we have somebody that agrees, we don't need as much evidence as if we have an audience that disagrees. And so it's really going to determine how I deliver my message and what considerations I'm making as I prepare that essay. We have demographics, which includes age, race, gender, the way that we categorize people into statistics. We have values. We have both religious and ethical values. These can include moral values. There's background and experience. How much does the reader know about the topic before coming into it? We have assumptions. What assumptions do we expect our reader to already have? Relationship to the writer. How well do we know that writer? And expectations. What do your readers expect from this essay? So let's start with demographics. Again, we're looking at things like age, race, and gender and how they will affect the message. So we look at a topic that could be written differently to men than women. We look at something like abortion. This could affect men differently than women. So we might change our message in order to fit that audience. We look at other things like age. How does age affect that message? I remember I had a class with an 88-year-old student. We were talking about children with special needs, and his opinion was that special needs children belong in a home because they're a burden on their parents. And I was shocked. That's not something that I have ever encountered before. And so I need to know maybe more about what different generations will believe in order to change my message or to change the way that I deliver that message. Next, we're going to look at values. And values, we don't necessarily just mean religious values. They can be ethical or moral values, but we want to think about something like religion or politics and the controversy that they can bring to an argument. So I want to know if I'm writing to maybe a left-leaning audience or a right-leaning audience. Again, that can change the way that I deliver my message, because I don't want to offend or put off a certain part of the audience, because then my writing becomes ineffective. So if I know that I'm writing to a left-leaning audience or a right-leaning audience or an audience of a specific religion, I might want to change that message or the method that I'm using to deliver that message in order not to alienate or push away that audience. Now, you can write to offend, but you can't write to offend and to persuade at the same time. So I have to decide what is my message, what's the method that I'm going to use. And then what happens when you assume another person's values and you get it wrong? That could make you look foolish. That could harm your argument because now you've made that audience opposition. And so we want to include as many as we can within our audience without offending or pushing away. Next, we have background and experience. So we look at what level of knowledge our audience has. An example of this is I've had students write articles that deal with horses. I've never ridden a horse, which is surprising because I grew up on a dairy farm and you would think that horses would be a part of that. But my knowledge about horses is extremely limited. So as you're talking about different equipment or different parts of a saddle, I'm not going to know what these mean. So you're going to need to explain more to an audience that has less knowledge about the topic. Another thing could be vocabulary. Let's look at this paragraph. So a student of existentialism. So existentialism, what is it? Most of us probably don't know. Then we get into the paragraph, we see this phrase, while this prominence fits the overall emphasis of phenomenological ontology. And we think, what does that mean? It's something that I am not familiar with. I'm going to need to look up. Your reader's probably going to need to look it up. If your reader has to do extra research to understand your essay, then you're not writing to that audience. So you want to make this a lot more easy for your audience to digest. So I need to know what terms need to be defined, what terms need to be explained. For example, in horseback riding, you're going to need to explain a lot more to me than somebody who also enjoys that activity. Next are assumptions. Are you challenging accepted beliefs or assumptions? For example, if you're writing about used car salesmen, what are some assumptions that people make about used car salesmen? Or if you're writing about fast food companies, do they have healthy options, or does everybody just assume that fast food companies are all putting forth unhealthy food? So we need to look at what assumptions our audience might have coming into the argument. We look at this argument here. Children often learn more about empathy from their fathers than their mothers. If I'm to argue this, I'm going to assume that a good part of my audience disagrees. And so I really need to provide a lot more evidence than I would for an audience that agrees. This is going to feel counterintuitive to me, as I always would think that empathy would be given more from a mother's perspective. And so if I'm going to argue this topic, I need to think of what my reader will expect. And again, it's probably going to be a lot more evidence than otherwise.